joined now by our friend Andy McCarthy. But I also want to mention, in the meantime, I think we have like 100,000 TikTok followers on the Clay and Buck show. So I should mention that we are active on TikTok. Basically, if you go on to any social media platform, in addition to being able to hear us 3 hours every day, whether it's TikTok, whether it's Instagram, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Twitter, you can put in my name, you can put in Buck's name, you can put in Clay and Buck, and you will find us on every social media platform under the sun. I doubt that Andy McCarthy has been like Buck Sexton practicing dance moves in his apartment trying to get ready for TikTok celebritydom. Maybe he has. He's a Mets fan after all. There's not a lot to dance for, though, at least not historically. And Andy joins us now. We're going to get into a bunch of stuff, Andy. Mets had a good offseason, by the way. Congratulations on your owner being so rich he can pay whatever he wants for anybody. It's a nice thing to have. But let's dive into some of these legal related issues. I understand that the Trump team is angry about the fact that a sentencing occurred. But if you and I had gone on the air when all this started and said, if Trump is convicted of everything, eventually it's going to lead to an unconditional discharge where effectively Judge Merchan acknowledges that there is no punishment and there are no consequences other than the process itself for Trump, I think a lot of people would have called us crazy. Yet this is where we are. Basically, after all this, Merchan says, okay, I'm going to stamp him. He's a felon, but nothing at all is going to happen to him. This case is over, unconditional discharge. I mean, it's kind of an unprecedented procedural posture from my perspective. Would you agree? How would you analyze it?
Well, I think it's the best outcome, Clay, for Trump. Now, I say that as someone who's been I've kind of been pushing against the grain with a number of my friends who point out, and I do not disagree with this in principle, that this is a preposterous case. Trump has an excellent chance of getting it reversed on appeal, but those of us who've been in the biz know that you can't get to your appeal until you've been sentenced and the judgment of conviction is formally entered. And that means this had to happen today if you were going to get on to the appeal. And I think a lot of people look at this and say, look, Trump's got a great chance of winning an appeal. Why doesn't he just let the sentencing happen and let's get on with it? But the thing is, it's not my criminal record. It's easy for me to say on balance, I think he should just get on with the sentencing so we can get on with the appeal. But President Trump is a 78-year-old guy who was proud of the fact that he never had a run-in with the law that left him with a criminal record before. And I think he's appalled at the fact that he got dragged through this totally absurd criminal proceeding, which wouldn't have happened to anyone else, brought by a district attorney who's notorious for not enforcing the laws. So it couldn't have been more clear that it was just a rigged political thing. So I understand why he didn't want to have this happen. And look, he came within 10 days of basically getting to the point where they couldn't touch him anymore, which is why they were in such a hot panic to do this. But I think when they all step back from this, what they're going to linger on is what you just summarized. And the way I've been putting this point is this. Remember that in bringing this case and converting what's normally a misdemeanor in New York into a felony, what Bragg claimed was Trump falsified his business records for the purpose of committing another crime. And the other crime they said he committed basically was to steal the 2016 election. And I think everybody now knows that if you really believe this guy stole the most important office on the planet, all the power of the presidency, how on earth could you sentence him to no jail, no probation, and no fine? So I think in the end, it just really shows how absurd this thing was from soup to nuts.
Andy, do you feel like this has, on the one hand, greatly undermined respect for the law, but on the other hand, there's the rejection of lawfare that has occurred at the ballot box, right? So, I mean, to me, looking at this, it seems like this has been a really bad time for the law as a general concept and for the system, but also it's been preserved in another sense? How do you look at this now that we've gone through the 4 criminal prosecutions? We've seen where it all goes. How do you assess the damage?
I think it's really bad. I'm thankful that it wasn't worse because I think the good fortune, Buck, that happened here, which isn't getting enough attention, is the Supreme Court's immunity ruling. If it hadn't been for the immunity litigation, then Jack Smith would have been able, with Judge Chutkin's help, to rush the J6 case to trial. And I think if they had tried Trump, say, for 2 or 3 months, beginning in April or so of 2024, and what that case was about was something that people are not happy about, right? The January 6th thing. You can argue, and I have argued, that prosecution in the criminal courts was not the right check on that behavior, but that's a technical legal argument. That would have been, 2 or 3 months of trial with, a reminder of that event in the middle of the campaign. And I think people might have had a different impression of lawfare. What ended up happening was because the Supreme Court issued first the immunity litigation, which Smith didn't anticipate, put the whole January 6th case on ice. And then when the Supreme Court decided it in July, it was clear that there was no way that Smith was ever going to get to trial. And as a result, in the public mind, lawfare is Bragg's case. And that's what Trump should always have wanted. So I think it worked out well for Trump because in the public mind, lawfare is this very abusive use of the criminal proceedings to invent a case unabashedly partisan, as it was done by Bragg, and break every rule in the book to get him convicted in the end. And it's an idiotic case. So I think that was a real turnoff to people. And as a result, it helped Trump a lot in the election. But it might not have worked out that way if it hadn't been for the immunity litigation.
Let's wade into the weeds. You mentioned that you think there might be an appeal that could work. I presume that could be a multi-front appeal in both what is the second crime that allowed this to be elevated from a misdemeanor to a felony. That's always been a bit of a mess in this Bragg case. Also, how could presidential immunity, if at all, ultimately weigh in here in terms of were these or were these not official presidential tactics in some way? What do you think the chances, if you were setting odds, are on appeal for Trump at this point? Not that it matters that much because, again, there is an unconditional discharge and there's no actual crime, but punishment. But 2 years from now, what do you think the chances are that we basically have this entire thing wiped clean?
I don't know what a number I'd put on it, but I would be shocked if this case survives appeal. And that's because I think it's shot through with reversible error, even in the bringing of the case in the first place. So, for example, since you're inviting me to get in the weeds, I think it's a violation of New York's Constitution to bring the case the way Bragg brought it, because the statute that he relied on did not make it clear, and does not make it clear, that a state district attorney has a right to enforce federal campaign law. Then I think the indictment fails as an indictment because it fails to state the second crime. So it doesn't put the defendant on notice of what the crime is, which is what an indictment's supposed to do.
And I'm sorry to cut you off here. In fact, if I remember correctly, didn't they say the second crime could be any one of 3 different second crimes? Like they didn't even specify which one you had to convict on.
Yeah, you're hitting the one at the end that I think is the most egregious error of all, which is that Merchant told the jury that they didn't need to be unanimous on what the other crime was. That, basically there was 3 choices, but he didn't even make them choose from those 3 choices. He told them, you don't have to tell us which one it is, and you don't need to be unanimous. And the Supreme Court, I think, cannot have been more clear that in a criminal case, when you're talking about a fact that is consequential in terms of what the sentence will be, and let's remember, This is the fact that turns the misdemeanor into a felony, right? It's the fact that turns something that would be, 0 to less than a year into a 4-year felony which when strung together the way Bragg did, we're talking about like 130 years potential of incarceration, right? So obviously, under Supreme Court jurisprudence, the jury had to be unanimous on what the crime was, and Merchan told them they didn't have to be.
Andy, can you also give us your sense? We only got a couple minutes, but on the whole TikTok fiasco, the oral arguments heard by the Supreme Court today. But just what do you make of forcing the sale or shutdown of this app and the Congress stepping in and all that?
Yeah, I guess because of the work I've done in the national security realm over the years, I've really thought this was kind of a frivolous appeal. I mean, I don't like to throw that word around, although I do feel like in the age of lawfare I've thrown it around an awful lot. But this is not a First Amendment case. Nobody is stopping anybody's speech. What they're saying basically is that a hostile foreign power cannot own a platform for expression in the United States. No one's saying that somebody else can't operate TikTok the same way, and no one is saying that if somebody else does buy TikTok and they want to run it exactly the same way as it's run now, no one's saying they can't do that. What they're saying is that a hostile foreign power can't own a platform like this in the United States. That seems to me to be common sense.
All right. Andy McCarthy, everybody. Andy, appreciate you being with us as always.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
Start the new year with more energy by making Chalk Daily Supplements part of your routine. Formulated with natural ingredients, Chalk products are for everyone. For guys, Chalk's Male Vitality Stack includes a leading ingredient that replenishes diminished testosterone levels. That's your body's natural source of energy. When your T levels are low, and that happens as we age, Chalk's Male Vitality Stack can replenish it naturally in just 3 months' time. Chalk's Female Vitality Stack can help regulate hormone health for the ladies. If you remember our conversation yesterday about having the right tone when speaking to the fair sex, this will help. Little inside joke there. Maximize your potential this year with a subscription to Chalk Supplements. Use my name, Buck, as your promo code. Get a massive discount on any subscription for life. Go online to chalk.com. That's CHOQ.com. Use my name, Buck, CHOQ.com. Use my name, Buck, for a great discount on any subscription for life. Chalk, CHOQ.com. Promo code, Buck.